Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. British Columbians are working harder than ever, and this Premier tends to be raiding their paychecks in a desperate bid, quite frankly, to clean up his fiscal mess. 30% of all income tax dollars in this province are now going to pay interest on his overspending. Not on health care, not on housing, not on mental health, just the Premier's reckless borrowing. Matter of fact, the Premier is so addicted to tax money, the average household is now paying $1,000 a year just to service his debt. In other words, instead of giving a $1,000 tax rebate that he promised in the last election, he's actually hit them with a $1,000 a year bill just to pay interest. So why is this Premier forcing families who are struggling day after day just to put food on the table and to put heat in their house? Why is he handing billions, quite frankly, to banks instead of actually having fiscal responsibility in this province?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Thank you to the member opposite for the question. When we began our work in 2017, we inherited a deficit of hospitals, of schools, and we began building. Honourable Chair, this work is important to British Columbians. We have built infrastructure in this province that was very much lacking. We continue to have reasonable debt metrics, 5 cents on every dollar. When you compare our debt metrics to other provinces, you can see we compare favourably to Ontario, to Quebec, and to Canada. It is true that we have work to do to bring our deficit down, and we are determined to do that work.
Opposition House Leader, supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, $5.1 billion is going to be spent on interest now and growing. But here's the interesting stat that maybe the Finance Minister has ignored. Almost half of the amount of deficit or the amount of debt that is being taken on by this government, by the Premier and his government, is actually being deficits, not the capital that this Finance Minister just talked about. $32 billion in deficits versus $65 billion in debt. That is irresponsible spending. That is not investing in the hospitals and in the roads and in the schools that we need in British Columbia. Debt servicing now eats up, like I say, 30% of what personal income taxes come in. So, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, it's the Premier who should be fighting, the affordability crisis we have. Instead, he is the affordability crisis that British Columbians are facing. So why is this Premier more interested in spending dollars on banking instead of actually putting dollars back in people's pockets so that they can afford to have food on the table?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Here's a newsflash to the Leader of the Opposition. When you build hospitals, you've got to put people in them to run them. When you build schools, when you build schools,
members will come to order now. Members.
When you build schools, we put teachers in them to teach. And, Honourable Speaker, it is very important that we continue to do the work to make things affordable for British Columbians, and we have been. Reducing costs like rent and ICBC, the biggest reduction any province has experienced in the past 2 years. We've kept ICBC rates low, saving drivers $500 per year.
Members.
Free prescription, birth control, childcare fees cut in half. I could go on, and the member knows it. And he also knows that he would make different decisions, and British Columbians would feel it.